In the Topcon D Series slit lamps, you have the D2, D4, which is the Zeiss type of slit lamp. And then you have the D7, 701 that are the tower type. Well, it's interesting to know that the bases of both these types are the same, except for a little difference. We're going to zoom in and look at the difference. Both of these are digital ready slit lamps. You can put a camera on either one. And the difference between these two is that because of the tower weight and the attachments of the D7, they're going to have some additional support springs in here that the D2 and D4 won't have. So if you were to take the cover off with a screw on each one, just a screw holding it, you'd have access to the top of these carriers. And you'll notice that on the D2 there's nothing, but on the D7 you have additional support springs. And this is what these support springs look like. They've got a fairly amount of spring in them, and you could make a D2 into a D7 just by adding a couple of these springs. And it could be that you're maybe you've got a lot of attachments on your D2, so you might need these springs. So the way you could put them in, you'll notice it's got two little lips on here. We're going to slip it in and turn it so that the lips will catch up here. So if I ran this all the way up, and slipped it down into the hole, then I'm going to get a screwdriver and just turn it so that the two lips will catch. And that's how they're inserted. And similarly, if you wanted to remove the spring, you would just put your screwdriver in and turn it so that the lips turn to be removed. And you can run it down, or you can just pull it out. If you needed to get access to get to your spindle assembly due to damage, sometimes if it's dropped, the shaft and the gear holder of the spindle, the threads might break either on either one or strip out, and while you're turning your joystick you can tell it's slipping or it just doesn't move because it's been stripped out, it's been damaged. So to be able to get to that, we're going to have to take the top carrier off, and we'll be taking this screw out with this washer and these three hex head screws, just so we can look underneath, because under here there's some spring washers that help to cushion the shaft from bottoming out. So we'll look at those. So we'll take this out. And the reason it came up like that, because I had it all the way down, but if we had screwed it up, it wouldn't have jerked like that. And then we're going to take these out. Now there's a big spring under there, so you need to keep a hand on the top of this carrier so that you can control it coming off. Like that. And then it comes up. So here's the spring. We're going to take that off, put it to the side, and then here are these two spring washers. They're not straight, they're concave, both of them, and they have two so that you can put them together where there's a larger area, not on top of each other like that, but opposites, so you have more of a cushion, more of a spring-like action when the carrier is going down and up, when your spindle is traveling up and down. So that needs to come. You need to save that and put that back on once you reinstall it. And here's the bottom of the carrier. You'll notice these cutouts are for the two lips, and you put them in and turn them so that they engage on the sides, and when you want to release, you've got access for them to come out. And this is underneath what it looks like. So if we're putting this from underneath, it looks like this. You see the two ears, we'll call these ears or lips. They'll be fitting right into the little notches. And that's what keeps it in place. That's when they're in place correctly. They'll fit into there. Now another thing I'll point out is that on the top of these carriers, someone will have put a little pencil mark, and this is a number 7. And if you looked at a D2, there would be a little 2 there, just in pencil. And it's possible that the manufacturers, when they were putting them all together, they would, if they saw 7, they would install 2 springs. And if it were a 2, they wouldn't put the springs in them. So once you get that off, then you would have to take this assembly out, pull your spindle assembly out, and also on here it also has the spring washers. It has like 2 or 3 sets of spring washers. There could be 7 washers, and if you turn them so that they're opposite each other, That will give you the little cushion so it doesn't bottom out, and it helps to prevent that from damaging. So when you put it back together, get those washers the same way and put it back in and run it to the top to give yourself a little more room. And if you want to make sure that your screws are going to line up before you put your spring on, you can make sure your hex screws are going to line up. And be sure to have lubed everything. And then we're going to reinstall our washers so that we get the largest padding opposite. Put the spring back in. And then the carrier back on. I'm going to bring it down so that we can put our hex screws back in. They're all the same length. Now when you're putting it all back together, you might want to leave these hex screws a little loose. And then run it up and down a couple times. To reseat the bearing sleeve, and then tighten up your screws and then check it. Make sure it's going to travel. And then if it's a D7, put our springs back in. Might be easier if it's all the way up. You could almost do it by hand. Might want to turn it a little bit to make sure those ears fall into place. Make sure that bottom is, it has a spot down there that's to fit in snugly. One thing I forgot to mention is to make sure that you have the little copper brass washer, thin washer, on top of your shaft. That gives it a little bit of space to move around. That gives it just enough clearance to work smoothly. Check it all one more time. Make sure everything's tight, and then put your cover and screw back on.